We're here with David Wilcock, and we're very happy to be invited to his humble abode, which is not so humble, and won't say where. And David, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Carrie. I've had the opportunity to be in the right place at the right time on many occasions with some really amazing people. And I've had a lot of really interesting experiences of my own, going all the way back to very early in my life. I read this book actually when I was 7 years old. It's called How to Make ESP Work For You by Harold Sherman. This book talks about ESP as if it were something that most people didn't understand, didn't know about. And that surprised me. Most kids in my grade were reading Clifford the Big Red Dog, and this book was obviously a lot more intense than anything most kids would read at my age. There were no pictures. It was kind of scary. You're looking at these little bitty words and trying to, follow it. But I was just so fascinated as a child with the concepts that that I just got into it. And the other thing that I felt really drawn to at that age was books on hypnosis. And I read both of these books beginning when I was 7 years old as well. I somehow felt that there was a connection between hypnosis and ESP, and didn't understand why I felt that way until much later. The next book that I really read was Erica Cheatham's Nostradamus Prophecies, 1985 and Beyond. This is when I first got into the idea that there was going to be some kind of event around the year 2000, which Nostradamus scholars typically would say is a cataclysmic event, a nasty event. And I saw that special on HBO where the Russian nuclear missiles are going to blow up the U.S., and they had Orson Welles narrating, and he goes into great detail about Nostradamus' prophecies. What triggered, why would a 7-year-old kid read books like this? Why would you be inspired to conduct such research at such a young age? Well, I was unusually intelligent, but more importantly, when I was 5 years old, I had a really pivotal event in my life, which was an out-of-body experience. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was floating over my own body in bed, and I looked down and saw myself breathing, so it was clear that I was still alive. But I couldn't make sense out of why I was in two places at the same time and why I still had these funny yellow pajamas with the red cuffs. Well, the event had such an impact on me that I saved the pajamas. They became sacred pajamas, and I never washed them again. I never wore them again. These pajamas were in two places at once, and I didn't understand how that could be, and so they became very sacred to me. I wake up the next morning, very excited. I tell my father, and he says, "Oh, you just had a dream." I went to school, and I told the kindergarten teacher, Mrs. DeMazzi. She says, "You just had a dream." Now, bear in mind, I was a typical silly kid. Mrs. DeMazzi told my friend Chris and myself to go trim the Christmas tree, and so we proceeded to take our little scissors and start cutting branches off the tree. So, I did kid things. I had rocks in my pocket and paper clips and gumballs, but at the same time, once this out-of-body thing happened, I saved the pajamas, and I said, I got to get another chance, because if I hadn't have been afraid, I wouldn't have stayed in the house, and I probably would have gone somewhere really fascinating. And I had so many UFO dreams where, in some cases, I would end up talking to someone who looked like, after I saw the movie Star Wars, it became Obi-Wan Kenobi. And he said that something really amazing was going to happen in the future on Earth, and that I had some kind of role in it, and that I would be guided. And most of the conversations I couldn't remember when I woke up, but I would be so overwhelmed with the emotion of the loss of this contact with him that I would wake up and just be devastated. by the fact that I had lost that connection.
If we fast forward from that, which is a wonderful introduction to who you are today, you at some point became aware that you could be the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce.
Right. I did read the ESP book, and he said the younger you are when you start doing these exercises, the more psychic you'll be. I'm like, I'm already 7 years old. What am I? I'm never going to be very good now. Should have been doing this since I was 2. I read this book, Stephen LeBerge, Lucid Dreaming, and then Exploring the World of Lucid Dreaming in high school, and was able to have lucid dreams based on the techniques in this book. I would end up on the main deck of UFOs and talking to beings, and LeBerge's perspective is, hey, this is just your mind. There's nothing real about any of this stuff. So I would just wake up and laugh and be like, none of this means anything. In college, I quit using alcohol and all intoxicating chemicals. I did smoke some marijuana, and I quit that in my sophomore year. 6 months later, a friend comes in to my room. He had traveled a long distance to see me, and he was white as a sheet of paper, and he said, I got to tell somebody what just happened. What are you talking about? He said, I just had a conversation with my physics professor, and he said UFOs are real. Give me a break, man. Come on. So, but I was curious enough that I had him keep talking, and he basically said the physics professor offhandedly mentioned UFOs are real, and he was the star pupil, so after class, he talked to the professor, and the professor said, yeah, we know this is true, we meaning NASA. He had worked in the higher echelons of NASA for 11 years. We know this is true, but we're never going to let it go out on the main headline of the New York Times. And the reason why is that we shock tested the public with War of the Worlds and found out that they really can't handle the truth. Because they're going to think that they're being invaded, they're going to think, they're going to panic, the economy is going to go belly up, so we just can't let this out. So there's a gradual indoctrination going on, getting people into this information. He said that the ship had a panel all the way around the bottom, and they pulled it off expecting to see components inside, and instead all they saw was this ceramic. So for a couple of years they didn't know what they were looking at, and they finally looked at the ceramic under magnification, high magnification, and saw all these lines on it. It turns out that this was a gigantic computer chip that ran the whole width of the ship, and it was a superconducting ceramic material, which means that electrons would flow through it without any loss. Now, from this, the professor said that we got fiber optics. They found burnt edges of fiber optic cables in the ships. We got Teflon, the non-stick material. It's a special material. We got Kevlar, bulletproof vests came from reverse engineering. Laser beams pass between two mirrors. One of them is semi-permeable, a beam comes out. Lasers came from the ships. LED lights came from the ships. Infrared night vision came from the ships. They looked through the porthole windows and they saw this green you could see outside at night. And computer chips, obviously. So what this really means is that most of the technology that we now have, including the technology that's recording my voice and that we're filming with, would not exist if it were not for this sort of celestial inheritance that we got in the 40s. Well, that just screwed my head right off. And for 2 weeks, I'd be walking down the street, I'd see a manhole cover, I'd think of UFOs. I'd go to the cafeteria, I'd have a plate on my... I'd be eating off this plate thinking of UFOs. I just couldn't get it out of my mind. After 2 weeks' time, I said, if this is real, and I believed it was, because he went into propulsion systems, how they could get to light speed. He went into 3 different types of occupants they found in the ships. If this is real, it's the most important thing there could possibly be to study. I finished college and I got my bachelor's degree in psychology and I got a PhD in UFOs. This was the director of communications for the Apollo missions. Okay, this guy is the real deal, high-end NASA scientist who came forward in 1995 to say that they had discovered ruins on the moon, architecture on the